Nora Blake's hands trembled as she stared at the leather-bound menu. No prices. That was never a good sign. Across the table, Caleb Hayes, broad-shouldered, easy smile, clearly comfortable here, was saying something about the seafood, but all she could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. Her bank account had $43 in it. The appetizers alone probably cost more than that. She could fake a headache. She could excuse herself to the bathroom and never come back. Or she could do the one thing that terrified her most. Tell the truth. If you want to see how one honest moment can change everything, stick with me until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. The restaurant was called Marcello's, and it was the kind of place where people celebrated anniversaries and promotions, where the waitstaff moved like dancers, and the lighting made everyone look like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Nora had looked it up on her phone 3 times before arriving, each time hoping she'd misread the name. That maybe Caleb had meant the pizza place 2 blocks over with the similar name. He hadn't. She'd almost turned around at the door. Then again in the foyer. Then one more time when the host asked if she had a reservation, and she'd had to explain she was meeting someone. The host's smile had been polite but assessing, taking in her Target dress, and her shoes that were nice but not nice, the kind of smile that said, "You don't belong here," without saying anything at all. Caleb had stood when she approached the table. That had surprised her. Men didn't do that anymore, or at least none of the men she'd dated. He'd smiled, genuinely not the practiced smile of someone going through the motions, and pulled out her chair. "You look great," he'd said, and she'd mumbled something that probably sounded like "thank you," but might have been nonsense. Now, 5 minutes into sitting down, she was still staring at the menu like it was written in a foreign language, which, in a way, it was. Branzino, ossobuco, pappardelle with something she couldn't pronounce. "The halibut's incredible here," Caleb said. He'd set his menu down already, relaxed, one arm draped over the back of his chair. "But honestly, everything's good. Can't go wrong." Nora nodded. She couldn't make her mouth form words yet. "You okay?" he asked. His voice had changed, less casual, more attentive. "You seem a little—" "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. She forced a smile. "Just deciding." The waiter appeared then, saving her. Young, handsome, with that particular brand of server friendliness that felt rehearsed but effective. He filled their water glasses from a bottle, bottled water, probably $5, and asked if they'd like to start with drinks. "I'll have a bourbon. Neat," Caleb said. "Woodford Reserve if you have it." "Of course." The waiter turned to Nora. "And for you, miss?" Her mind went blank. Water's fine. Still or sparkling?" "Just tap is good." The waiter's smile never wavered, but she saw it, that tiny flicker of judgment. "Of course. I'll give you a few more minutes with the menu." When he left, Caleb leaned forward. "You sure you're okay? You seem tense." Nora gripped the menu harder. The leather was soft under her fingers, probably cost more than her monthly electricity bill. "I'm just not used to places like this." "Yeah, I know it's a bit much," Caleb said, almost apologetically. "My buddy Mark recommended it. Said it was great for first dates. I probably should have asked if you liked Italian." "I do," Nora said. That much was true. She loved Italian food. The cheap kind, from the jar, over pasta that cost 99 cents a box. This wasn't that. She'd met Caleb 3 weeks ago at a coffee shop. She'd been on her laptop trying to stretch one small coffee into 3 hours of free Wi-Fi while she job hunted. He'd asked if he could share the table. The place was packed, and she'd said yes without looking up. Then his daughter had appeared, maybe 6 or 7, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, asking if Nora liked unicorns. That had broken the ice. They'd talked. Not long. He was clearly juggling single dad duties, and the kid was antsy, but long enough for Nora to notice his eyes, the way they crinkled when he smiled, the patience in his voice when his daughter spilled her hot chocolate. Long enough for him to notice what exactly. She still wasn't sure. She was nobody special. 28, working 2 part-time jobs that barely added up to 1 full-time income. Living in a studio apartment with walls so thin she could hear her neighbor's phone conversations. But he'd asked for her number, and he'd actually called, not texted. Who did that anymore? Now here she was, drowning. "So what do you think?" Caleb asked. "You want to share a few things?" Try different stuff? Sharing meant more dishes. More dishes meant higher bills. Nora's stomach clenched. Actually, she started, then stopped. Her throat felt tight. Caleb, Yeah? Just say it. Just tell him. But the words stuck. They always stuck. All her life, she'd been the person who said I'm fine when she wasn't, who smiled through gritted teeth, who went hungry rather than admit she couldn't afford lunch. Pride, her mother used to call it. Stubbornness, her brother said. Nora just thought of it as survival. If you didn't let people see you struggling, they couldn't pity you. They couldn't use it against you. But this was different. This wasn't just skipping a meal or pretending she didn't need help. This was sitting in a restaurant where the napkins probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget, about to rack up a bill that would destroy her account and leave her choosing between electricity and rent. I need to tell you something, she said finally. Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Caleb's expression shifted, not concerned yet, just attentive. Okay. Nora set the menu down carefully, precisely, lining it up with the edge of the table. She couldn't look at him. I can't afford this. Silence. She risked a glance up. He was watching her, face unreadable. I'm sorry, she continued, the words tumbling out now. I should have said something before. I looked up the restaurant and I saw the reviews and I knew it would be expensive, but I thought maybe I could just order something small, like a salad or something. But there aren't prices on the menu and that usually means it's really expensive and I only have $43 in my account right now. And I'm pretty sure that won't even cover an appetizer here and Nora? His voice was gentle but firm enough to cut through her spiral. Breathe. She sucked in air. Her hands were shaking. She tucked them under the table, pressed them against her thighs. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have come. I should have been honest from the start. I didn't want you to think I was... She couldn't finish. Didn't want to say the words, poor, struggling, not worth your time. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Nora couldn't stand the silence. She started gathering her purse, preparing to leave, to end this humiliation as quickly as possible. When my wife died, Caleb said suddenly, and Nora froze. Sorry, that's a hell of a conversation starter. But when she died, I had about $800 to my name. Sophie was 3. The funeral cost more than I had in savings. I had to borrow from my brother, and he's not exactly rolling in it either. Nora slowly set her purse back down. I know what it's like, Caleb continued. Not having enough. Counting every dollar. Making choices between things that shouldn't be choices, like food or medicine, electricity or gas. He shook his head. I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm just saying, I get it, and I don't think less of you for it. You don't? No. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Why would I? Because everyone else did. Because admitting you were broke was admitting you'd failed somehow, that you hadn't worked hard enough or been smart enough. Because money was the measure of worth in this world, and having none meant being worthless. But she didn't say any of that. Let's get out of here, Caleb said. He signaled for the waiter. You don't have to leave because of me, Nora protested. You can stay, eat. Nora. He met her eyes. I don't want to eat here without you. That's not why I asked you out. The waiter approached, that professional smile in place. Ready to order? Actually, we're going to head out, Caleb said. Sorry about that. No problem at all. If the waiter was annoyed, he didn't show it. Have a great evening. Caleb stood and Nora followed, feeling like she was floating outside her body. They walked out past the tables of beautiful people eating beautiful food, past the host who gave them the same polite but cold smile, out into the cool evening air. Nora stopped on the sidewalk. I'm so sorry. I ruined your night. You didn't ruin anything, Caleb said. You were honest. That's not something to apologize for. Most guys would have just left. Then most guys are assholes, he said it matter-of-factly, without heat. Look, I didn't ask you out to impress you with expensive food. I asked you out because I wanted to spend time with you. The venue doesn't matter. Nora felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept locked tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Hope, maybe, or just the simple relief of being seen. There's a food truck, Caleb said, about 6 blocks from here. Best tacos in the city, and I'm not exaggerating. Sophie and I go every Friday. You interested? I love tacos, Nora said, and meant it. They walked. The city was alive around them. Friday night energy, people spilling out of bars and restaurants, street musicians on corners, the smell of hot dogs and exhaust and possibility. Caleb didn't try to fill the silence with chatter. He just walked beside her, hands in his pockets, comfortable. Can I ask you something? Nora said after a few blocks. Sure. Why'd you pick such an expensive place if you've been where I am? Caleb laughed, but it wasn't unkind. Honestly, I'm an idiot. My buddy Mark has money, like real money, and he forgets that the rest of us don't. He recommended Marcello's, and I didn't even think to check it out first. I just figured, first date, make an effort, you know? I didn't realize I was setting up a situation where you'd feel uncomfortable. It's not your fault. No, but I should have been more thoughtful about it. He glanced at her. I'm not broke anymore, by the way. I mean, I'm not rich, but I'm stable. I'm a project manager for a construction company. I do okay, but I remember what it was like. I don't forget that. What happened? Nora asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's too personal. It's okay. You told me your stuff. I can tell you mine. He took a breath. My wife, Anna, she had a heart condition. Congenital, something she'd had since birth. We knew about it, knew it was risky, but she was careful. She took her medication, went to all her appointments. We thought we had time, you know. We thought we'd grow old together. His voice didn't waver, but Nora saw the tension in his jaw. She collapsed at work. By the time they got her to the hospital, it was too late. Sophie was 3. I was 29. And suddenly I was a single dad with no idea what I was doing, barely making rent, trying to figure out how to explain death to a toddler. I'm so sorry, Nora said quietly. Yeah, me too. He shook his head. But you keep going, right? You have to. Sophie needed me, so I figured it out. Got better jobs, learned to budget like a champion, built something resembling a life. It's not the life I planned, but it's ours. They turned a corner and the food truck came into view, a bright orange thing with hand-painted lettering that read, Taco Heaven, and a line of about 15 people. Worth the wait, Caleb promised. They joined the line. Around them, people chatted and laughed, the smell of grilled meat and cilantro making Nora's stomach growl. She realized she'd been too nervous to eat lunch. So your turn, Caleb said. You don't have to, but if you want to share, what's your story? Nora considered deflecting. She'd gotten good at that, at keeping people at arm's length, but he'd been honest with her, painfully so. She could give him the same courtesy. I'm the oldest of 4, she started. My dad left when I was 12, just didn't come home one day. Mom worked herself into the ground trying to keep us fed and housed. I dropped out of college after a year to help out, took whatever jobs I could get. Retail, waitressing, data entry. None of them paid enough, but enough of them together almost did. That's a lot of weight for a kid to carry. Felt normal at the time, Nora said. Everyone was depending on me. My younger siblings needed things, school supplies, clothes that fit, lunch money. Mom needed help with rent and bills. There was no one else to step up, so I did. Are you still supporting them? My brothers, yeah. One's in community college, the other's in high school. My sister got married and moved to Oregon, so she's off the list. And Mom, Nora's voice tightened. Mom got sick 3 years ago. Lung cancer. She didn't make it. Jesus, Caleb breathed. Nora, I'm sorry. She shrugged, the gesture automatic. It is what it is, but yeah, that's why I'm broke. 2 part-time jobs, helping my brothers, trying to keep my head above water. Some months I make it, some months I don't. They moved up in line. The food truck's menu was blessedly simple and affordable. 3 tacos for $6, add rice and beans for 2 more. What are you doing for work now? Caleb asked. I'm a receptionist at a dental office 3 days a week, and I clean houses on the weekends. Looking for something full-time, but everyone wants experience I don't have or a degree I didn't finish. That's brutal. Yeah. She smiled tiredly. But I keep trying. What else can you do? They reached the front of the line. The woman running the truck, round face, bright smile, graying hair pulled back in a bun, greeted Caleb like an old friend. Caleb, where's my favorite little girl? Home with a babysitter, Caleb said. Maria, this is Nora. Nora, Maria makes the best tacos you'll ever eat. He's biased, but he's not wrong, Maria said with a wink. What can I get you to? I'll have 3 carnitas and 1 al pastor, Caleb said. Rice and beans, too. Nora? 3 al pastor, please. Rice and beans, sweetie? Nora hesitated. Just the tacos is fine. Make it 2 with rice and beans, Caleb told Maria, handing over a 20 before Nora could protest. Caleb? It's tacos, not a 5-course meal. Let me do this. Maria prepared their food, humming to herself, and Nora watched the practiced efficiency of her movements, the way she assembled each taco with care, the generous portions of meat, the sprinkle of cilantro and onions. This was someone who took pride in their work, no matter how humble the venue. Here you go, babies, Maria said, handing over 2 styrofoam containers. Enjoy. And Caleb, bring Sophie by soon. I miss her face. Will do, Maria. Thanks. They found a spot to sit on a low wall near a streetlight. The tacos were, as promised, incredible. The meat tender and flavorful, the tortillas fresh, the salsa with just enough kick. Nora couldn't remember the last time food had tasted this good. So, Caleb said after they'd eaten in comfortable silence for a few minutes, can I ask you something that might be too forward? You can ask. I might not answer. Fair enough. He wiped his hands on a napkin. Why'd you say yes to going out with me? I mean, if money's tight, dating's probably not high on the priority list. Nora considered the question. Honestly, you seemed kind. When Sophie spilled her hot chocolate and you didn't get mad, just cleaned it up and told her accidents happen, I don't know, I liked that. And when you talked to me, you actually listened. You didn't look at your phone or interrupt or try to fix everything I said. You just listened. That's a pretty low bar. You'd be surprised how few people clear it. Caleb laughed. Yeah, fair point. So what made you almost run away 3 times before coming into the restaurant? You counted. I saw you through the window. Thought you might bail. Nora felt her cheeks heat. I almost did. I kept thinking, what am I doing here? This guy could have anyone. He's got his life together. He's got a kid. He's probably looking for someone stable and put together. And I'm just me. Broke and struggling and barely keeping it together most days. You know what I thought when I met you? Caleb asked. What? I thought, this woman's exhausted, but she still took the time to talk to my kid about unicorns for 10 minutes, even though she clearly had stuff to do. She made Sophie feel important and listened to. And then when Sophie left, you went right back to your laptop without missing a beat, like you'd just taken a little break instead of having your time interrupted. I like kids, Nora said simply. I know. Sophie wouldn't stop talking about you after we left. The nice unicorn lady became part of her regular conversation rotation. He smiled at the memory. But my point is, I didn't see someone struggling. I saw someone kind, someone patient, someone doing her best. That's what made me want to know you better. Nora didn't know what to say to that. She focused on her tacos, blinking back the sudden sting of tears. They finished eating, threw away their trash, and started walking again with no particular destination. The night had cooled, and Nora wished she'd brought a jacket. You cold? Caleb asked. A little. He shrugged out of his jacket, a worn denim thing that looked like it had seen better days, and held it out. I'm fine, Nora protested. Nora, just take the jacket. You're shivering. She took it. It smelled like fabric softener and something else, something clean and masculine. She pulled it around herself and felt the warmth seep into her bones. Thank you, she said quietly, for all of this. For not making me feel like garbage when I told you I was broke. For the tacos, for not being a complete asshole. Again, that's a really low bar. The bar is on the floor and people still trip over it. Caleb stopped walking. They were on a quieter street now, away from the Friday night chaos, under a tree strung with old Christmas lights that someone had never taken down. Can I be honest with you about something? He asked. Okay. When you said you couldn't afford the restaurant, my first instinct was to just pay for everything and pretend it wasn't a big deal. Act like money didn't matter. But that would have been about making me feel better, not you. It would have been me avoiding the discomfort of the situation instead of actually dealing with it. Nora studied his face. What changed your mind? I remembered what it felt like, he said, when people would try to help after Anna died, but they'd do it in this way that made me feel small, like I was a charity case, like I should be grateful for the scraps. And I hated it. I hated feeling like I owed people, like my grief and my poverty were something they got to feel good about fixing. He ran a hand through his hair. So when you told me the truth, I figured the best thing I could do was meet you where you were. Not above you, not below you, just with you. Something in Nora's chest cracked open wider. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, she whispered. Then you've been spending time with the wrong people. They stood there under the off-season Christmas lights, and Nora felt something shift, not in a dramatic movie moment way, but in something quieter and more real, like a door opening, just a crack to let light in. I should probably get home, she said reluctantly. Early shift tomorrow. Where do you live? I'll walk you. You don't have to. Nora. He said her name like it was something precious. Let me walk you home. So she did. Her apartment was 20 minutes away, in a building that had definitely seen better days. Graffiti on the walls, a broken buzzer system, the faint smell of garbage from the alley behind the building. Nora felt self-conscious bringing him here, but Caleb didn't seem to notice or care. This is me, she said, stopping in front of the entrance. Okay. He made no move to follow her in, which she appreciated. Can I see you again? You still want to? Why wouldn't I? I'm kind of a mess. We're all kind of a mess, Caleb said. That's not disqualifying. Nora smiled despite herself. Okay, yeah, I'd like that. Good. How about something low-key next time? Walk in the park with Sophie? She's been asking about you. I'd love that. Saturday afternoon work? I have to clean houses until 2, but after that I'm free. 3 o'clock then. I'll text you the details. Nora handed back his jacket. Their fingers brushed and she felt that spark again, that little flutter of possibility. Thanks for tonight, she said. For real. Thank you for being honest, Caleb replied. That took guts. He waited until she was inside before walking away, and Nora stood in the dingy hallway of her building, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope, exactly. Hope felt too big, too fragile, but maybe possibility. The sense that things didn't have to be the way they'd always been. That maybe, just maybe, someone could see her struggling and not turn away. She climbed the stairs to her studio apartment, let herself in, and sat on her secondhand couch in the dark for a long time, thinking about tacos and honesty and a man who'd chosen kindness when he could have chosen judgment. Her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Made it home. Sophie wants to know if you still like unicorns. Nora smiled and typed back, tell her I love them. The response came quickly. She says you're officially her favorite. What about you? Nora typed before she could stop herself. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Still deciding, he wrote, but you're definitely in the top 5. Nora laughed out loud in her empty apartment. Then she got up, changed into her sleep clothes, and set her alarm for tomorrow's early shift. But before she turned off the light, she pulled out her laptop and did something she hadn't done in months. She updated her resume. Not because she thought one good date would fix her life, but because for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe she deserved something better than just surviving. Maybe she deserved the chance to build something. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do it alone. Saturday came with rain. Nora woke to the sound of it hammering against her window, the kind of relentless downpour that turned gutters into rivers and made the whole world smell like wet concrete. She groaned and checked her phone. 2 texts waited. The first was from Caleb, sent at 7 that morning. Still on for this afternoon? Sophie's already picked out her rain boots. The second was from her brother Marcus, sent 10 minutes ago. Can you spot me $60? Electric bills due Monday, and I'm short. Nora stared at the ceiling and did the math in her head. She'd gotten paid yesterday from the dental office, $240 for the week. 40 of that was already earmarked for her share of the electric bill. Another 80 needed to go to her landlord, who'd agreed to let her pay rent in installments after she'd begged last month. That left her with $120, which needed to cover food, bus fare, and her phone bill. If she gave Marcus $60, she'd have $60 left for 2 weeks. She closed her eyes and texted back, "Yeah, I can Venmo it." His response was immediate. "You're the best. Love you." She sent the money before she could change her mind, then watched her bank balance drop to $73.43, the same amount she'd had last week, the same amount she always had no matter how hard she worked. It was like running on a treadmill that kept speeding up while she stayed in place. Her phone buzzed again. Caleb. That's a yes, Nora typed. Yes, see you at 3. She dragged herself out of bed and got ready for work. Mrs. Patterson's house was first, a 3-bedroom in the suburbs that took 4 hours to clean properly. Mrs. Patterson was particular about corners and baseboards, the kind of woman who ran her finger along surfaces after Nora finished, checking for dust. But she paid on time and didn't make Nora feel like hired help, so it could have been worse. The bus ride took 40 minutes. Nora watched the rain streak down the windows and tried not to think about her bank account. Mrs. Patterson answered the door in yoga pants and a sweater that probably cost more than Nora's monthly rent. "Oh good, you made it. I was worried the weather might keep you away." "I'm here," Nora said, shaking out her umbrella. "Wonderful. Same as usual. Bathrooms, kitchen, floors. I'm having company tomorrow, so if you could pay special attention to the living room, that would be lovely." 4 hours later, Nora's back ached and her hands smelled like bleach despite the gloves. Mrs. Patterson inspected her work with the same critical eye as always, nodded approval, and handed over $80 in cash. "You do good work," she said. "Same time next week?" "Yes, ma'am." The rain had led up to a drizzle by the time Nora caught the bus back into the city. She had just enough time to go home, shower, and change before meeting Caleb. She picked the nicest of her limited wardrobe, jeans that fit well and a sweater without any stains or holes, and actually put on mascara, which she almost never did. At exactly 3 o'clock, she stood outside Riverside Park's main entrance, watching families and couples drift by under umbrellas. The park was mostly empty because of the weather, just a few determined joggers and one old man throwing a tennis ball for an ancient-looking retriever. "Nora!" She turned. Sophie was running toward her in bright yellow rain boots and a purple jacket, her hair in 2 lopsided braids. Caleb followed at a more reasonable pace, carrying a backpack and smiling. "You came!" Sophie skidded to a stop in front of her. "Daddy said you might not because of the rain, but I knew you would." "Of course I came," Nora said, crouching down to Sophie's level. "I wouldn't miss it. Do you like my boots? They have frogs on them. See?" Sophie stuck out one foot to display a pattern of small green frogs. "Those are excellent boots." "I know." Sophie grabbed Nora's hand with the unselfconscious ease of a child who hadn't learned to be guarded yet. "Come on, I want to show you the playground." "Soph, let's at least say hi first," Caleb said, but he was grinning. "Hey, Nora." "Hey." They started walking, Sophie between them, swinging both their hands. The drizzle had stopped, but the air was heavy with moisture, and everything looked washed clean and new. "So I have to warn you," Caleb said. "Sophie has planned our entire afternoon. I had no input." "It's true," Sophie confirmed seriously. "I made a list." "A list?" "First playground, then we walk to the duck pond. They probably won't be there because of the rain, but we should check. Then we get ice cream, even though it's cold because ice cream is good anytime, and then we go to the library for story time." "That's quite a schedule," Nora said. "She's very organized," Caleb added. "Gets it from her mother. I'm more of a figure-it-out-as-we-go person." They reached the playground, a sprawling structure of slides and climbing equipment and swings, all gleaming wet. Sophie immediately released their hands and ran for the swings. "Push me!" she called back. Caleb and Nora followed. Caleb took up position behind Sophie's swing while Nora stood to the side, watching. "Higher!" Sophie demanded. "You're already pretty high, kiddo." "Higher!" Caleb pushed harder, and Sophie shrieked with delight, her legs pumping. Her laughter was infectious, and Nora found herself smiling despite the exhaustion in her bones. "Your turn," Sophie announced after a few minutes, dragging her feet to stop. "My turn what?" Nora asked. "To swing, come on." Sophie was already climbing off, gesturing imperiously at the empty swing. "I haven't been on a swing in about 20 years. "That's really sad," Sophie said with devastating sincerity. "You need to swing right now." Caleb was trying not to laugh. "You heard the boss." So Nora sat on the swing, feeling ridiculous and self-conscious. The seat was wet and cold through her jeans. Caleb moved behind her. "Ready?" he asked. "I guess." He pushed, gently at first, then harder as she gained momentum. The ground fell away and rushed back, fell away and rushed back. Wind hit her face, her stomach dropped and lifted. And suddenly she was 7 years old again, before her dad left, before everything got hard, when the world was just swings and summer and the sound of her own laughter. "You're smiling," Caleb said when she finally slowed to a stop. "Shut up." But she was. They walked to the duck pond, which was indeed empty of ducks. Sophie was philosophical about this. "They're probably inside somewhere dry. That's what I would do." "Very reasonable," Nora agreed. "Do you have a house?" Sophie asked suddenly. "Sophie," Caleb said in a warning tone. "What? I'm just asking." "I have an apartment," Nora said. "It's small, but it's mine." "Do you live alone?" "Yep." "That sounds lonely." "Sometimes it is," Nora admitted, "but sometimes it's nice to have quiet." Sophie considered this. "I like quiet sometimes too, like when Daddy makes me turn off the TV and we just read books. That's nice quiet." They continued walking. Caleb pointed out various landmarks: the tree where he and Anna had carved their initials years ago, the bench where Sophie had learned to tie her shoes, the hill where they sledded in winter. He talked about Anna easily, without the weight of grief crushing every word, just memories, fond and painful in equal measure. "She would have liked you," he said to Nora while Sophie ran ahead to investigate a particularly interesting rock. "How do you know?" "She liked honest people, people who didn't put on airs or pretend to be something they weren't." He glanced at her. "You would have gotten along." Nora didn't know what to say to that, so she just walked beside him and tried not to read too much into it. The ice cream shop was called Sweet Dreams, and it was the kind of place that stayed open year-round out of pure stubbornness. An elderly man with kind eyes ran the counter. "Caleb Hayes," he said warmly. "Haven't seen you in a few weeks." "Hey, Mr. Chen, been busy. This is Nora. Lovely to meet you. What can I get you folks?" Sophie ordered strawberry and a cone. Caleb got chocolate. Nora hesitated. She'd given Marcus $60 this morning and really shouldn't spend anything extra, but Sophie was watching her expectantly. "Vanilla," she said finally. "In a cup." Mr. Chen scooped generous portions and refused to let Caleb pay. "You helped my grandson with his college essays, remember? We're even for the next decade at least." They sat at a small table by the window, eating ice cream and watching the rain start up again. Sophie told a long, meandering story about her friend Emma's pet hamster who could apparently do tricks. Caleb interjected occasional clarifications when the plot got too convoluted. Nora just listened, feeling something warm settle in her chest that had nothing to do with the ice cream. "Can Nora come to story time with us?" Sophie asked when she'd finished her cone. "If she wants to," Caleb said. "Nora? I'd love to." The library was 5 blocks away. An old brick building with tall windows, and the particular smell of books that made Nora nostalgic for a childhood she'd barely had. The children's section was in the basement, bright and colorful, with bean bags and stuffed animals scattered around. Storytime was led by a woman in her 60s who read with theatrical flair, doing different voices for each character. Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor with the other kids, completely absorbed. Caleb and Nora hung back with the other parents, sitting on tiny chairs meant for children. "I feel like a giant," Nora whispered. "Wait until your knees start cramping." They watched the story unfold, something about a bear and a rabbit and a lost button. The woman reading made it feel important, like it mattered that the button was found and the friendship was saved. When it ended, Sophie bounced over. "That was the best one yet." "You say that every week," Caleb said, "because it's true every week." They checked out books. Sophie picked 4, the maximum allowed, and then walked back out into the damp evening. The rain had stopped again, but the sky was dark and heavy with the promise of more. "I should probably get home," Nora said reluctantly. "Early shift tomorrow at the dental office." "We'll walk you," Caleb said. "You don't have to." "Nora, we're walking you." So they did, the 3 of them, with Sophie in the middle, holding both their hands again. She chattered the whole way about the books they'd checked out and what she wanted to be for Halloween, even though it was only September, and how her teacher, Mrs. Martinez, had a fish tank with real fish in it. When they reached Nora's building, Sophie threw her arms around Nora's waist. "Thank you for coming today." Thank you for inviting me, Nora said, hugging her back. Sophie released her and ran a few steps ahead, giving them space. Caleb shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. I had a good time. Me too. Maybe we could do it again, without the rain, ideally, but I'll take what I can get. I'd like that. Good. He smiled. I'll text you. Nora watched them walk away, Caleb's hand on Sophie's shoulder. Sophie skipping and talking, until they turned the corner and disappeared. Inside her apartment, she kicked off her wet shoes and collapsed on her couch. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. Got the payment. Seriously, you're a lifesaver. Then Caleb. Sophie says you're officially her second favorite person, after me. Nora smiled and typed, I'm honored to place. She heated up leftover rice and beans for dinner, her usual meal when money was tight, and tried to work on her resume like she'd promised herself. But her laptop was ancient and slow and kept freezing, and after 20 minutes of frustration, she gave up. The week passed in a blur of work and exhaustion. Monday and Tuesday at the dental office, where she answered phones and scheduled appointments and smiled at people who treated her like furniture. Wednesday, she cleaned 3 houses back to back and came home with $200 cash and hands so dry they cracked. Thursday, another shift at the office. Friday, she was supposed to have off, but Dr. Morrison called and asked if she could cover for the regular receptionist who'd called in sick. I'll pay you time and a half, he offered. Nora needed the money too badly to say no. She texted Caleb when she could, quick messages between appointments or on bus rides. He sent pictures of Sophie's drawings, stick figures labeled Daddy, Sophie, and Nora, under a rainbow, and updates about his work projects. Nothing deep, nothing earth-shattering, just the small daily things that people share when they're getting to know each other. Saturday morning, Nora woke to her phone ringing. Not a text, an actual call. She fumbled for it, groggy and disoriented. Hello? Nora, it's Marcus. Her brother's voice was wrong, tight and scared. Nora sat up, suddenly wide awake. What's wrong? It's Danny. He got jumped last night walking home from work. He's okay. He's at the hospital, but... Marcus's voice cracked. They took his phone and his wallet, and he's got 2 cracked ribs and they want to keep him overnight for observation. Danny, her youngest brother, 17 years old, working nights at a grocery store to help pay for his senior year expenses. Is he okay? I mean, besides the ribs? Scared, hurting, the hospital bill's going to be brutal even with Medicaid. Marcus sounded like he was barely holding it together. I'm here with him now, but I had to miss my shift at the warehouse, and I don't know if they'll let me make it up, and... I'm coming, Nora said. Which hospital? St. Teresa's. But Nora, you don't have to I'm coming. She threw on clothes and caught the first bus she could, her mind racing. 2 cracked ribs meant x-rays at minimum, maybe pain medication, definitely a hospital stay. Even with insurance, the bills would be hundreds, maybe thousands, and Danny would be out of work for weeks. The hospital waiting room was fluorescent bright and smelled like disinfectant and fear. Marcus was there, slumped in a plastic chair, looking like he hadn't slept. He stood when he saw her. You didn't have to come all the way down here. He's my brother too. Nora hugged him. Where is he? Room 347. They're running some final tests, but we can probably go up soon. They sat together in silence for a while. The TV in the corner played morning news that nobody was watching. A woman in scrubs walked by, pushing a cart. A kid cried somewhere down the hall. This is my fault, Marcus said finally. I should have picked him up. I should have made sure he got home safe. You can't be everywhere at once. I'm his big brother. I'm supposed to protect him. Marcus. Nora grabbed his hand. You're 23 years old, working full-time and going to school. You're doing the best you can. This isn't on you. Doesn't feel that way. A nurse appeared and told them they could go up. Danny's room was small and sterile, all white walls and beeping machines. He looked tiny in the hospital bed, bruised and young, with gauze wrapped around his ribs under his gown. Hey, he said when they came in. His voice was rough. You didn't have to come. Stop saying that, Nora told him. Of course we came. She sat on the edge of his bed carefully. How are you feeling? Like I got jumped. He tried to smile but winced instead. They gave me good drugs, though. What happened? I was walking home from my shift. These guys came out of nowhere, 3 of them. They wanted my phone and wallet. I gave them over. I wasn't stupid enough to fight, but one of them kicked me anyway, just because he could, I guess. Nora felt rage boil up in her chest, hot and useless. Did you see their faces? Marcus asked. Too dark. I told the cops everything I remembered, but I don't think they'll catch anyone. Guys like that, they probably do this all the time. They stayed for an hour until Danny started falling asleep from the medication. In the hallway, Nora pulled Marcus aside. How much is this going to cost? I don't know yet. A lot. And he's going to miss at least 2 weeks of work, probably more. The grocery store doesn't do paid sick leave for part-timers. Nora did the math in her head. She had $73 to her name. Her next paycheck from the dental office wouldn't come for another week. She had 3 houses to clean tomorrow, which would bring in maybe $240, but she needed that for rent. I'll figure it out, she said. Nora, you can't keep saving us. Watch me. But as she rode the bus back to her apartment, the anger drained away and left only exhaustion. She was so tired of this, of always being the one who held everything together, of sacrificing and scraping and never having anything left for herself, of watching her brothers struggle and not being able to fix it. Her phone buzzed. Caleb. Hey, I know it's last minute, but Sophie and I are making pancakes. Want to come over? Nora stared at the message. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to go sit in a kitchen that probably smelled like maple syrup and butter, to watch Sophie flip pancakes that would inevitably end up misshapen, to pretend for a few hours that her life wasn't falling apart. But she couldn't. She typed, rain check, family emergency. His response was immediate. Everything okay? Will be. Just need to handle some stuff. Let me know if you need anything. She almost laughed. What would she even ask for? Money? Help? A way out of the endless cycle of barely surviving? Those weren't things you asked a guy you'd been on 2 dates with. Instead, she wrote, thanks. Talk soon. She spent the rest of the day cleaning her apartment, not because it needed it, but because she needed something to do with her hands, something to make her feel like she had control over at least one small part of her life. She scrubbed her bathroom until it gleamed, organized her tiny closet, washed dishes that were already clean. When her phone rang again that evening, she almost didn't answer, but it was Marcus. Danny's insurance is covering most of it, he said without preamble. We'll still owe about $400 after everything's processed, but it's not as bad as we thought. $400. Might as well be $4,000. Okay, Nora said. We'll figure it out. Nora, we'll figure it out. After she hung up, she sat on her couch in the dark and tried to remember the last time she'd felt like her life was moving forward instead of just treading water. High school, maybe. Before Dad left, before Mom got sick, before she became the person everyone leaned on. Her phone buzzed one more time. Caleb. Sophie wanted me to send you this. It was a photo of a drawing, the 3 of them again, but this time they were eating ice cream, big smiles on all their faces, hearts floating around their heads. She says she misses you, Caleb added. Me too, if I'm being honest. Nora looked at the drawing for a long time. Then she saved it to her phone, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow she'd clean houses. Monday, she'd be back at the dental office. She'd help Marcus and Danny figure out the hospital bill. She'd keep going because that's what she did, what she'd always done. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself imagine what it would be like to have less weight on her shoulders. To be someone's priority instead of everyone's backup plan. To be the person in the drawing, smiling under a rainbow, instead of the person lying awake at 3 a.m. trying to figure out which bill to pay first. The rain started again outside her window, and Nora closed her eyes and tried not to think about Monday. Monday morning arrived with a notice taped to Nora's apartment door. She saw it before she'd even gotten her key in the lock, coming back from her pre-dawn run to the corner store for coffee. The paper was official-looking, stamped with the building management's logo, and her stomach dropped before she'd read a single word. Notice of late payment. Eviction proceedings will begin if full payment is not received by October 15th. October 15th. That was 12 days from now. Nora ripped the notice off the door and went inside, hands shaking. She'd paid her landlord $200 last week, half of what she owed for September. He'd said that was fine, that she could pay the rest when her next check came in. They'd had an agreement. Apparently the agreement meant nothing. She tried calling the building manager's office, but got voicemail. left a message that came out more desperate than she'd intended. Then she sat at her tiny kitchen table and added up the numbers again, even though she already knew what they'd say. Rent owed, $400. Danny's hospital bill, $400. Her share of utilities, $40. Phone bill, $60. Food and bus fare for the next 2 weeks, maybe $80 if she was careful. Total needed, just under $1,000. Current bank balance, $73.43. She had to be at the dental office in an hour. She got ready on autopilot, showered, dressed in the scrubs they required, grabbed her bag. The bus was late and crowded, and someone's coffee spilled on the floor, making the whole vehicle smell like burnt French vanilla. At the office, Dr. Morrison was already in a mood. His first patient had canceled, and he hated gaps in the schedule, said it threw off his whole rhythm. Nora apologized, even though it wasn't her fault, and spent the morning rebooking appointments and dealing with insurance companies that put her on hold for 30 minutes at a time. During her lunch break, she sat in her car, a 15-year-old Honda that ran on prayers and stubbornness, and called the building manager again. This time someone answered. "Wellington Properties, this is Diane." "Hi, this is Nora Blake from Unit 412. I got an eviction notice this morning, but I had an arrangement with Mr. Wellington about paying my rent in installments." "Mr. Wellington retired last month, honey. New management's taken over and they're cracking down on late payments. Says here you're 2 weeks overdue on September rent." "I paid half, $200. He said I could pay the rest this week." "Well, the new policy is full payment on the 1st, or you're in violation of your lease. I'm sorry, but that's how it is now." Nora closed her eyes. "Can I speak to whoever's in charge?" "Mr. Reeves doesn't take calls until after 3. You can try back then." She tried back at 3:15. Mr. Reeves' assistant said he was in a meeting. At 4:30, she was told he'd left for the day. By the time her shift ended at 6, Nora had called 4 more times and gotten nowhere. She drove to Mrs. Patterson's house for an emergency clean. The woman had called that afternoon saying she needed her guest room done before her mother-in-law arrived tomorrow. It wasn't on Nora's regular schedule, but she needed every dollar she could get, so she said yes. 3 hours later, she had another $80 and a backache that wouldn't quit. She got home after 10, ate peanut butter straight from the jar because she was too tired to make actual food, and fell asleep on her couch still in her cleaning clothes. Tuesday was worse. Dr. Morrison fired the dental hygienist, some dispute about vacation days that Nora didn't fully understand, and spent the entire day in a foul mood that he took out on everyone around him. Nora smiled and nodded and absorbed his irritation like a sponge, because that's what you did when you couldn't afford to lose your job. Between appointments, she finally got through to Mr. Reeves. "Ms. Blake, I understand your situation, but we have policies for a reason. The previous management was far too lenient and it created problems. We need full payment by the 15th or we'll begin eviction proceedings. That gives you almost 2 weeks. I paid half already, which we've applied to your account. You still owe $400. "I don't have $400 right now. I'll have it by the end of the month. End of the month is too late. October 15th, or we file." "Please," Nora said, and hated how small her voice sounded. "I've lived here for 3 years. I've never missed a payment until last month. I just need a little more time." "I'm sorry, but the policy is firm. 15 days. He hung up before she could respond. Nora sat at the reception desk, staring at the phone, feeling something crack inside her chest. Not break. That would have been cleaner. This was more like a slow fracture, the kind that spreads gradually until the whole structure collapses. Her phone buzzed. "Caleb, haven't heard from you in a few days. Everything okay?" She stared at the message. What would she even say? That she was about to be homeless? That she was drowning and didn't know how to ask for help because she'd spent her whole life being the one who helped everyone else? She typed, "Just busy with work, sorry." His response came quickly. "No worries, just checking in. Sophie keeps asking when you're coming over again." "Soon," Nora wrote, even though she had no idea when that would be. Wednesday, she cleaned 4 houses back to back, a personal record. Her knees ached, and her hands were raw despite the gloves. And she came home with $320 that immediately went into her account to bring her balance up to almost $400. Still not enough. Thursday at the dental office, one of the regular patients asked Nora if she was feeling okay. You look tired, honey. Are you getting enough sleep? Just working a lot, Nora said with her professional smile. But I'm fine. The woman looked unconvinced but didn't push. During her lunch break, Nora sat in her car and cried for exactly 10 minutes, timing it on her phone because she couldn't afford to be late getting back. Then she wiped her face, fixed her makeup in the rearview mirror, and went back inside like nothing had happened. That evening, Marcus called. Hey, so Danny's going back to work next week. Doctor cleared him as long as he doesn't do any heavy lifting. And I talked to the hospital billing department. They'll let us do a payment plan, $50 a month. That's good, Nora said. She was lying in bed even though it was only 7:30, staring at the ceiling. You sound weird. What's wrong? Nothing. Nora. I'm fine. You're lying. I can always tell when you're lying. What's going on? She didn't want to tell him, didn't want to add her problems to his when he was already dealing with Danny's hospital bills and his own expenses. But the words came out anyway, tired and defeated. I'm getting evicted. Silence on the other end. What? When? I have until the 15th to come up with $400 or they file eviction papers. And I don't have it. I've been working every shift I can get and I'm still short. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because what were you going to do? You don't have $400 either. Nobody does. How much do you have? Almost $400. I'm about $30 short. Okay, I can swing 30. Let me check my account. Marcus, no. You need that money. You've got Danny's payment plan and your own rent and… Nora, shut up. His voice was firm. You've been bailing us out for years. Let me help for once. I can't. You can and you will. I'm Venmoing you $40 right now. That should cover it plus a little extra. Marcus, it's already sent. Check your phone. She did. $40 deposited. Her throat got tight. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. You've done way more for us than we can ever pay back. He paused. You know you can't keep doing this forever, right? Running yourself into the ground to keep everyone else afloat? I don't know how to stop. Maybe you should figure it out before you drown. After they hung up, Nora checked her bank balance. $437. Enough for rent with a few dollars left over. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she just felt empty. She paid her rent online that night, watching the balance drop back down to $37. 2 weeks until her next paycheck. 2 weeks to make that last. Friday morning, she woke up to her phone ringing. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Nora Blake? Yes? This is Jennifer from Dr. Morrison's office. I'm calling to let you know that we're going to have to reduce your hours starting next week. We're cutting back on administrative staff. Nora sat up, suddenly wide awake. What? How many hours? You'll be down to 2 days a week instead of 3. I'm sorry, it's a business decision. Dr. Morrison wanted me to let you know as soon as possible. 2 days instead of 3. That was a third of her income, gone. Just like that. When does this start? Nora asked, proud that her voice stayed steady. Monday. Again, I'm really sorry. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up and sat there in her bed, staring at nothing. Then she got up, got dressed, and went to work because what else was she going to do? The office felt different knowing she'd only be there 2 days a week now. Smaller, more temporary. Dr. Morrison avoided eye contact with her all morning, which confirmed that the decision had come from him. During a slow period, she updated her resume on her phone and started scrolling through job listings. Most required degrees she didn't have or experience she couldn't prove. The ones that didn't pay minimum wage and required weekend availability, which meant she'd have to give up her house cleaning gigs that actually paid decent money. Her phone buzzed. Caleb. Sophie's school is doing a fall festival tomorrow. Pumpkin patch, hay rides, the whole thing. Want to come? Fair warning, it's aggressively wholesome. Nora stared at the message. She should say no. She should spend tomorrow looking for another job, picking up extra cleaning work, figuring out how to survive on 2/3 of her income. But the thought of spending time with Caleb and Sophie, of being around people who made her feel like something other than a collection of problems to solve, was too tempting to resist. What time? She typed back. 11. I'll pick you up? I can meet you there. Nora, let me pick you up. She gave him her address, feeling self-conscious about her building's shabby exterior, and broke an intercom. But he just wrote back, "See you at 10:45. Saturday morning, Nora woke up early and cleaned her apartment even though no one was coming inside. She put on her nicest jeans and a sweater that didn't have any holes, did her makeup carefully, and waited by the window. Caleb pulled up at exactly 10:45 in a silver SUV that had definitely seen better days but was clean and running. Sophie waved frantically from the back seat. Nora went downstairs and climbed in. The car smelled like coffee and kid, crayons and fruit snacks and something sticky. "Sorry about the mess," Caleb said, gesturing at the various toys and books scattered across the floor. "Sophie's organizational system is what I'd call creative chaos." "It's not chaos, it's a system," Sophie protested. "I know where everything is." "Uh-huh. Where's your library book that's due Monday?" Sophie was silent. "That's what I thought." They drove across town to Sophie's school, a small private place that probably cost more per month than Nora made. The parking lot was already packed with families, and the air smelled like cider and hay and autumn. The festival was exactly as advertised, aggressively wholesome. There were pumpkins everywhere, a petting zoo with goats and chickens, a station where kids could make scarecrows, and a hayride that circled the property. Parents clustered in groups, drinking cider from paper cups and watching their kids run wild. "Daddy, can I get my face painted?" Sophie asked immediately. "Sure, Bug. What do you want?" "A butterfly." "No, a cat." "No, a butterfly cat." "I don't think that's a thing." "It is now." They got in line for face painting. Sophie bounced on her toes the whole time, chattering about her week at school and her friend Emma's birthday party and how she'd lost another tooth. Caleb listened with the patient attention of someone who'd had this exact conversation 100 times and still found it interesting. When it was Sophie's turn, she ended up with a purple butterfly on her cheek that she immediately wanted to show everyone. She ran off to find her friends, leaving Caleb and Nora standing by the face painting station. "She's got good taste," the woman doing the painting said to Caleb. "Butterflies are always popular. She changes her mind every 30 seconds, so I'm just glad we landed on something," Caleb replied. They wandered through the festival, following Sophie from station to station. She picked a pumpkin that was almost too big to carry. She fed the goats and shrieked when one nibbled her sleeve. She made a scarecrow that looked deranged, but that she insisted was perfect. "This is nice," Nora said after a while. "Yeah?" Caleb glanced at her. "You seem a little distracted. Everything okay?" She almost brushed it off. Almost said she was fine, like she always did. But something about the way he asked, genuinely, like he actually wanted to know, made the truth slip out. "I'm losing hours at my job. Starting Monday, I'm down to 2 days a week." "Damn. I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." She watched Sophie chase another kid around a hay bale. "I just paid my rent. Barely. And now I don't know how I'm going to make next month's. Or pay for anything else, really." Oops, Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Can you pick up more cleaning work?" "Maybe, but most people already have someone, and the ones who don't usually want weekdays when I'm at the dental office." She shook her head. "I'll figure it out. I always do." "That's not really an answer." "It's the only one I have." Sophie ran back over, demanding they go on the hayride. They climbed onto the back of a trailer pulled by a tractor, sitting on hay bales with about 15 other people. The ride was slow and bumpy, circling through a small wooded area behind the school. Sophie sat between them, pointing out birds and interesting-looking trees. "I wish we could live somewhere like this," she said, "with trees and animals and space to run around." "Maybe someday," Caleb said, "when Daddy wins the lottery." "Do you play the lottery?" "No." "Then how will you win?" "Excellent question. Nora, any ideas?" "I think he's got a flaw in his plan," Nora said to Sophie seriously. "That's what I thought, too." When the hayride ended, they got cider and donuts and sat at a picnic table while Sophie ran off with her friends again. The cider was warm and sweet, the donuts still hot from the fryer. "So I've been thinking," Caleb said carefully. Nora tensed. She knew that tone. That was the tone people used before they offered help you didn't want to accept. "About what?" "About your situation. And I know you're going to say no, but hear me out first. Caleb, just listen. I have some savings. Not a lot, but enough. I could loan you what you need to get through the next few months while you find something more stable. You could pay me back whenever. Nora set down her cider cup. No, you didn't even think about it. I don't need to think about it. I'm not taking your money. It's a loan, not a gift. It's still not happening. She could feel her walls going up, that defensive prickle that came whenever someone tried to help. I appreciate it, I really do. But I handle my own problems. Nora, that's not... I said no. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. I'm not a charity case. I never said you were. That's what it feels like. She stood up, suddenly needing space. I'm going to find the bathroom. She walked away before he could respond, weaving through families and festival goers until she found the school building. The bathroom was empty and quiet. She locked herself in the stall and pressed her forehead against the cool metal door. She wasn't mad at Caleb, she knew that. He was trying to help because he was a good person and he cared about her. But accepting his money would make her dependent on him, would shift their relationship into something unequal and uncomfortable. She'd spent her whole life being the one people leaned on. She didn't know how to be the one who needed leaning on. When she came back out, Caleb was alone at the picnic table. Sophie was visible in the distance, playing tag with a group of kids. Nora sat down. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have snapped at you. You don't have to apologize. I do, though. You were trying to be nice, and I was a jerk about it. You weren't a jerk, you were honest. He turned to face her. Can I be honest back? Okay. I think you're scared. I think you've been handling everything by yourself for so long that accepting help feels like admitting defeat. But Nora, it's not. Letting people help you isn't weakness. It's just being human. Her throat got tight. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. She looked down at her hands. When my dad left, my mom fell apart, and I was the oldest, so I had to step up. I had to be the one who held everything together. My brothers looked to me, my mom looked to me, and if I couldn't handle it, everything would collapse. So I learned to handle it. I learned to fix problems and swallow my own needs and just keep going, no matter what. Caleb listened without interrupting. And now it's been so long that I don't know how to stop. Even when I'm drowning, even when I have nothing left, I keep pretending I'm fine because that's what everyone needs me to be. The strong one, the capable one, the one who doesn't break. What happens when you do break? I don't let myself. Nora, his voice was gentle but firm. That's not sustainable. You can't carry everything forever. Eventually something's going to give. I know. The words came out barely above a whisper. I'm just scared that if I let go, if I admit I can't do this alone, everyone will realize I was never as strong as they thought, that I was just faking it the whole time. Being scared doesn't make you weak. Asking for help doesn't make you less capable. He reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused. I'm not offering you money because I think you can't handle your life. I'm offering because I've been where you are, and I remember how alone it felt, and I don't want you to feel that way. Nora's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to cry at a school fall festival surrounded by happy families. I don't know how to say yes, she admitted. You just say the word, that's all. Just yes. Sophie came running back over, sweaty and laughing, demanding they go pick apples from the orchard section. The moment passed, but something had shifted. Not fixed, not resolved, but acknowledged. They spent another hour at the festival before heading out. Sophie fell asleep in the car on the way back, face paint smudged, clutching her too big pumpkin. Caleb drove carefully, quiet music playing on the radio. When they pulled up to Nora's building, he put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. Think about what I said, he told her. No pressure, but the offer stands. Okay, Nora said. I will. She got out and watched them drive away, Sophie still sleeping in the back. Then she went upstairs to her apartment and sat on her couch in the gathering dark, thinking about strength and pride and the cost of always holding on. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. Danny's first day back at work went okay. He's tired, but he made it through. Thanks for everything, Nor. Seriously. Then Caleb. Sophie wanted me to tell you she had the best time. Also, she wants to know if you like apple pie. Nora smiled despite everything and typed back. Tell her I love apple pie. Good, he wrote, because she's making you one tomorrow and I have to supervise. Fair warning, it's going to be a disaster. The best kind of pie. She set her phone down and pulled out her laptop, opened her bank account and stared at the number, $37.16. Then she opened a new tab and started looking at job listings again, because that's what you did. You kept looking, you kept trying, you kept going, even when you had no idea how. Sunday afternoon, Nora showed up at Caleb's apartment with a knot in her stomach and $37 to her name. The building was nicer than hers. Not fancy, but maintained. Working elevator, no graffiti, the kind of place where people actually fix things when they broke. Caleb had texted her the address that morning, along with a photo of Sophie covered head to toe in flour, captioned, "Send help. The pie situation is out of control." She found Unit 3B and knocked. Immediately, she heard Sophie's voice shrieking, "She's here!" followed by thundering footsteps. The door flew open. Sophie stood there in an apron 3 sizes too big, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, flour on her nose. "We're making pie," she announced. "Come see." The apartment was small but warm, lived in. There were drawings stuck to the fridge with magnets, a basket of toys in the corner, photos on the walls. Anna and Caleb on their wedding day, Sophie as a baby, the 3 of them at the beach. Nora felt like an intruder in someone else's memory. "Don't just stand there," Sophie said, grabbing her hand. "We need your help." The kitchen was a disaster zone. Flour covered every surface. Apple peels filled the sink. The counter held what looked like 3 failed attempts at pie crust. Caleb stood in the middle of it all, sleeves rolled up, looking simultaneously exhausted and amused. "Welcome to chaos," he said. "I tried to warn you. I see you weren't exaggerating. Daddy's bad at pie crust," Sophie informed her. "It keeps falling apart." "I'm not bad at it. I'm just out of practice." "That's what bad people say." Nora laughed despite herself. "Okay, let me see what we're working with here." She rolled up her sleeves and assessed the situation. The dough was overworked. Too much handling made it tough. She showed Sophie how to use just her fingertips, how to add cold water a little at a time, how to handle it gently, like you were trying not to wake it up. "You're really good at this," Caleb observed, watching her work. "My mom taught me. Before she got sick, she used to bake all the time. It was the one thing we did together that felt normal, you know? Like we weren't struggling, we were just a regular family making dessert." Sophie watched intently as Nora demonstrated rolling out the dough, her small face serious with concentration. When it was her turn to try, she pressed too hard and tore a hole. "It's broken," she said, devastated. "It's not broken, it's just got character. Here, watch." Nora pinched the dough back together. "See? Good as new." They got the pie assembled, eventually, and into the oven. Sophie insisted on setting a timer and watching through the oven window for the first 10 minutes until Caleb told her she was going to give herself a headache. "Why don't you show Nora your room while we wait?" he suggested. Sophie's room was exactly what you'd expect from a 7-year-old. Stuffed animals everywhere, a bed with a princess canopy, drawings taped to every available wall space. She gave Nora the full tour, explaining the backstory of each stuffed animal and why they sat in their specific spots. "This is Mr. Hoppins. He's the oldest, so he sits by my pillow. And this is Rainbow Dash, even though she's not actually from the show. I just named her that. And this one doesn't have a name yet because I'm still deciding." Nora sat on the floor and listened, letting Sophie's chatter wash over her. It was easier than thinking about her bank account, or her reduced hours, or the fact that November's rent was already looming and she had no idea how she'd pay it. "Do you have a favorite?" Sophie asked, gesturing at the army of stuffed animals. "I like the turtle," Nora said, pointing at a small green one that looked well-loved. "That's Shelley. I got her when I was 4. She's special because—" Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mama gave her to me." Nora's chest tightened. "She's beautiful. Mama liked turtles. Daddy says she was slow like them, but in a good way, like she thought about things really carefully before she did them." Sophie hugged Shelley to her chest. "I don't remember her very much. Just little pieces, like how she smelled like flowers, and how she sang me songs at bedtime. I bet she was wonderful." "Daddy says she was? He says I have her smile." Sophie grinned to demonstrate. "Do I?" Nora looked at the photos on Sophie's dresser. Anna holding a newborn Sophie, Anna and Caleb at someone's wedding, Anna pushing a toddler, Sophie on a swing. In one photo, Anna was laughing at something off camera. Her whole face lit up. "Yeah," Nora said softly. "You do." The timer went off downstairs. Sophie jumped up and ran for the kitchen, Shelley forgotten on the bed. Nora followed more slowly, feeling like she'd just been handed something precious and fragile. The pie looked perfect. golden brown crust, filling bubbling through the vents Sophie had carefully cut in the top. Caleb pulled it out and set it on the counter to cool. "We did it," Sophie cheered. "You did it," Caleb corrected. "Nora and I just supervised." They ate dinner first, spaghetti that Caleb made while Sophie set the table with elaborate care, making sure the forks and knives were perfectly aligned. It was simple food but good, and the conversation flowed easily. Sophie told a long story about her friend Emma's pet hamster who had escaped and been found 3 days later living in the couch cushions. Caleb talked about a project at work that was running behind schedule and driving him crazy. "What about you?" he asked Nora. "How's the job search going?" She'd sent out 14 applications in the past 2 days. So far, she'd heard back from none of them. "It's going," she said, which was technically true. After dinner, they had pie. It was delicious, the crust flaky, the apples perfectly spiced. Sophie ate 2 pieces and got whipped cream on her nose. When she started yawning, Caleb declared it bedtime. "But Nora's still here," Sophie protested. "Nora will still be here when you're done with your bath and your teeth." "Promise?" Sophie looked at Nora. "Promise." Sophie went upstairs reluctantly. Nora helped Caleb clean up the kitchen, washing dishes while he dried. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. "She really likes you," Caleb said after a while. In case that wasn't obvious. "The feeling's mutual. She doesn't open up to people easily. After Anna died, she went really quiet for a long time. Stopped talking to anyone except me. It took months before she'd engage with her teachers or the other kids at school." He set down the dish he was drying. "But with you, she just opened right up, like she'd known you forever." "Kids have good instincts about people." "Yeah, they do." He was looking at her in a way that made her self-conscious. Adults should trust those instincts more often. Before Nora could figure out how to respond to that, Sophie's voice called from upstairs. "Daddy, I'm ready." "I'll be right back," Caleb said. "Make yourself at home." Nora wandered into the living room while he was gone. More photos on the mantel. Anna was everywhere, woven into the fabric of this home. In the wedding photo, she was beautiful in a simple way, laughing while Caleb dipped her veil flying out behind her. There was so much joy in that picture it almost hurt to look at. Nora wondered what it felt like to be loved like that, to be someone's whole world, to know that even after you were gone, you'd still be present in every corner of their life. She heard Caleb reading upstairs, his voice low and rhythmic, a children's book about a mouse who wanted to be an astronaut. Sophie's occasional interjections asking questions or adding commentary. After about 20 minutes, the reading stopped and Caleb came back down. "Out like a light," he said. "That pie sugar crash hit hard." "She's a great kid." "Yeah, she is, most of the time. You should see her when she doesn't get her way, full meltdown mode." He sat on the couch and gestured for Nora to join him. "But even on her worst days, she's the best thing that ever happened to me." Nora sat, careful to leave space between them. The apartment was quiet now, just the sound of the refrigerator humming and distant traffic outside. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said. "Okay." "Have you thought any more about what we talked about yesterday? About letting me help?" There it was, the question she'd been dreading all day. "I have," she said carefully, "and I appreciate it. I really do. But I can't accept your money." "Why not?" "Because it changes things. Between us. I don't want this, whatever this is, to be about you rescuing me. I want it to be about 2 people who like each other, not about one person saving the other." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "What if I told you it wouldn't change anything? That I'd still see you the same way regardless?" "I wouldn't believe you. Money always changes things." She pulled her knees up to her chest. "My whole life I've watched people use money as power. My dad used it to control my mom. He made all the money, so he made all the decisions. After he left, we were powerless because we didn't have any. And every time someone helped us, there was always a price. Maybe not a direct one, but they'd hold it over us later, remind us that we owed them. I wouldn't do that." "You say that now, but what happens 6 months from now when we have a fight and you're mad at me? Or a year from now when you realize I can't pay you back as fast as you thought? It's always there, hanging between you, the debt, the imbalance. So what's your plan? Keep struggling alone until you break?" "If I have to." The words came out harder than she meant them to. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You know what I think? I think you're so scared of being vulnerable that you'd rather destroy yourself than accept help. And that's not strength, Nora. That's just stubbornness. Maybe. She felt her walls going up again, that familiar defensive prickle. But it's my choice to make. Even if it's a bad choice? Especially then. They sat in tense silence. Nora knew she should probably leave, end this before it turned into a real fight. But something kept her planted on the couch, unwilling to walk away, even when everything in her screamed that she should. I don't want to fight with you, Caleb said finally. I don't want to fight with you either. So let's not. He shifted to face her. Look, I can't force you to accept help. That's not how this works. But I need you to understand something. When I offer, it's not because I pity you or because I think you're weak. It's because I've been where you are and I know how isolating it is, how exhausting, and I don't want that for you. I know, and I'm grateful, but just listen for a second, okay? He took a breath. After Anna died, I was drowning, not just financially, though that was bad enough. I was drowning in grief and responsibility and this crushing fear that I couldn't do it alone. And for months, I tried to. I refused help from my family, from friends, from everyone, because accepting help felt like admitting I couldn't handle it. Nora stayed quiet. Then one day, my brother Mark showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't showered in 3 days. Sophie was eating cereal for dinner because I'd forgotten to buy groceries. The place was a disaster. And instead of judging me, Mark just rolled up his sleeves and helped. He cleaned while I showered. He went grocery shopping. He took Sophie to the park so I could sleep. Caleb's voice got rough. And when I tried to thank him, you know what he said? He said, "That's what people who love you do. They show up. Not because you're weak, not because you can't handle it, but because nobody should have to handle everything alone." Nora felt tears prick her eyes. So when I offer to help you, Caleb continued, it's not about debt or power or any of that. It's about showing up, because I care about you and I don't want to watch you suffer when there's something I can do about it. But what if I can't pay you back? The words came out small. What if I take your help and then I'm still struggling and you realize you made a mistake and then we figure it out together? That's how this works. Not you alone, not me rescuing you. Together. Nora wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know how to do that. The together part. I've been alone for so long. Then we'll learn. He reached for her hand, tentative, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just think about it. Really think about it. Not about what scares you or what could go wrong, but about what you actually need. What she needed. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? When was the last time she'd even asked herself? Okay, she whispered. I'll think about it. They sat there holding hands while the apartment settled into deeper quiet. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked as Sophie probably rolled over in her sleep. Outside, a car passed, its headlights briefly illuminating the room. Can I tell you something? Nora said after a while. Anything. I'm terrified. Not just of accepting help, but of this. Of us. Because what if I let myself care about you and Sophie, and then something happens? What if I'm not good enough, or I mess it up, or you realize I'm just this broken person who can't get her life together? Nora. Caleb squeezed her hand. We're all broken in some way. That doesn't make you less worthy of love or care or support. It just makes you human. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You just have to let people in. She leaned her head on his shoulder, exhausted from fighting her own instincts. He put his arm around her and they stayed like that, not talking, just being. Eventually, Nora's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Landlord called. Says Danny's apartment building is getting sold. He's got 60 days to find a new place. Just thought you should know. 60 days. Another crisis incoming. Another problem to solve. Nora closed her eyes and felt the weight of it settle on her chest, familiar and suffocating. What's wrong? Caleb asked, feeling her tense. Nothing, just family stuff. Nora. She showed him the text. He read it silently. Where does Danny live now? Cheap studio on the south side. But with the market the way it is, he's not going to find anything affordable, which means he'll probably ask to stay with Marcus, which will crowd Marcus out of his own place, Which means, she trailed off, seeing the chain reaction before it happened, which means you'll try to help and stretch yourself even thinner. What else am I supposed to do? Let them figure it out. They're adults. Danny's 17. Okay, so Marcus figures it out. You don't have to solve every problem for everyone. Yes, I do. That's my job. That's always been my job. Says who? The question caught her off guard. What? Who decided that was your job? Who put you in charge of fixing everything for everyone? I did. Nobody else was going to do it. And now? Caleb asked gently. What happens now when you can barely take care of yourself? Nora pulled away from him, standing up. I should go. It's getting late. Don't do that. Don't run away every time things get real. I'm not running away, I'm just tired. Nora, please, her voice cracked. I just need to go home and think. Caleb stood too, but didn't try to stop her. Okay, but promise me you'll actually think about what I said. Not just about the money, but about everything. About letting people share the load instead of carrying it all yourself. I promise. She grabbed her jacket from the coat rack by the door. Caleb walked her down to the lobby, insisting even though she said she'd be fine. At the door, he pulled her into a hug. You're not alone, he said into her hair. Even when it feels like you are, you're not. Nora held on tighter than she meant to, breathing in his scent, laundry detergent and coffee and something uniquely him. Then she made herself let go and step back. Thank you for dinner and the pie. Tell Sophie I said goodnight. She's going to want you to come back soon. I will. She walked to the bus stop, even though Caleb offered to drive her. The night was cold and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. The bus was mostly empty, just her and a guy in a security uniform dozing in the back. Nora stared out the window and thought about Caleb's brother showing up to help, about what it meant to let people in, about Sophie upstairs sleeping with her turtle, trusting that the world would still be there in the morning. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Caleb. Get home safe. And Nora? You're stronger than you think, but you don't always have to be strong. She read it 3 times before putting her phone away. Back at her apartment, she made a cup of tea she didn't drink and sat at her kitchen table with her laptop. Pulled up her bank account, $37. Pulled up her budget spreadsheet and tried to make the numbers work for November. They didn't. Even if she picked up extra cleaning jobs, even if she cut her food budget to almost nothing, she was going to be short. By a lot. She could ask Marcus for help, but he was dealing with Danny's situation. She could pick up another part-time job, but there were only so many hours in the day and she was already running on fumes. Or she could call Caleb. The thought made her stomach clench. Every instinct screamed against it. Don't be weak. Don't be dependent. Handle it yourself. But a quieter voice, one she wasn't used to listening to, whispered, What if he's right? What if you don't have to do this alone? Nora closed her laptop and went to bed. She'd decide in the morning. Tomorrow she'd figure out what she needed versus what she was too proud to accept. Tonight, she just needed to sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. She lay in the dark thinking about Sophie's drawings on Caleb's fridge, about Anna's smile in those photographs, about the way Caleb had held her hand like it was something precious, about what it would feel like to stop running and just let herself fall. Monday morning, Nora's phone rang at 6:30. She fumbled for it, still half asleep, and saw Mrs. Patterson's name on the screen. Hello? Nora, I'm so sorry to call this early, but I have an emergency. My sister in Florida had a fall, and I need to fly down today. Is there any way you could come by and do a deep clean before I leave? I know it's not your usual day, but I'll pay you double. Double. That would be $160 instead of $80. What time do you need me? Could you be here by 8? I'm flying out at noon. I'll be there. She threw on clothes and caught the earliest bus, arriving at Mrs. Patterson's house at 7:50. The woman answered the door already dressed for travel, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Thank you so much for doing this on short notice. I know it's a lot to ask. It's fine. I hope your sister's okay. She will be. She's tough. Like you, Mrs. Patterson handed over a key. Lock up when you're done. I'll Venmo you the money as soon as I'm at the airport. 4 hours later, Nora had cleaned the entire house top to bottom. Her back screamed and her hands were raw, but her phone pinged with a notification. $160 deposited. Combined with what she already had, That brought her to just under 200. Still not enough for November rent. She got home and found an email from one of the jobs she'd applied to, a full-time receptionist position at a medical clinic. They wanted to schedule an interview for Wednesday afternoon. Nora stared at the email, feeling a flicker of something that might have been hope. She wrote back confirming the interview, then spent an hour researching the clinic and updating her resume one more time. Her phone buzzed. "Caleb, how's your day going?" She almost wrote back fine, but stopped herself. He'd asked her to be honest, to stop pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. Picked up an emergency cleaning job this morning. Got an interview Wednesday. Still trying to figure out how to make rent next month. His response came quickly. "That's great about the interview, and the offer still stands if you need it." Nora set her phone down and stared at it for a long moment. Then she picked it back up and typed, "Can we talk?" "In person." "Of course. When?" "Tonight? After Sophie's bedtime? Come over at 8. I'll make coffee." The rest of the day dragged. Nora tried to distract herself with job applications and apartment cleaning, but her mind kept circling back to the decision she'd been avoiding. She'd spent so long being the person who helped everyone else that asking for help felt like admitting defeat. But maybe Caleb was right. Maybe there was a difference between being strong and being stubborn. At 7:30, she changed into clean clothes and caught the bus to Caleb's apartment. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair damp like he'd just showered. "Hey, come in. Coffee's brewing." The apartment smelled like the vanilla candles Anna had apparently loved. Caleb kept them burning, he'd told her once, because it made Sophie feel like her mom was still there in some small way. They sat at the kitchen table with their coffee, steam rising between them. Nora wrapped her hands around the mug, gathering courage. "I've been thinking about what you said," she started. "About letting people help, about not having to do everything alone." Caleb waited, not pushing. "And I'm scared. I'm really scared of what it means to accept help from you. Because if I do, it changes things. It makes me dependent on you in a way I've never been dependent on anyone. Or," Caleb said carefully, "it makes us interdependent, which is different. It means we both lean on each other when we need to. But I don't have anything to offer you. You're stable, you've got your life together, you don't need me for anything." "That's not true." He leaned forward. "You make me laugh. You're good with Sophie. You see me as more than just a widower or a single dad. You see me as a person, and when I'm with you, I feel like myself again, instead of just going through the motions." Nora's throat got tight. "That doesn't feel like enough." "It's more than enough. Relationships aren't transactions, Nora. They're not about keeping score or making sure everything's equal. They're about showing up for each other in whatever way you can." She took a sip of coffee, buying time. "If I say yes to this, I need you to promise me something." "Okay? If it ever feels like too much, if you ever regret it or start to resent me for it, you have to tell me. You can't just suffer through it because you're trying to be nice. I need honesty, even when it's hard." "I promise." "Same goes for you, though. If you start feeling like I'm holding this over you or using it as leverage, you call me out immediately. Deal." They shook hands, formal and a little ridiculous, and then both laughed at the absurdity of it. "So," Caleb said, "what do you actually need?" Nora pulled out her phone and showed him the budget spreadsheet she'd been staring at for days. "I'm short about $300 for November rent, and that's assuming I don't have any unexpected expenses and I basically stop eating anything except rice and beans." "Okay, I can give you $500. That covers rent and gives you a buffer for food and emergencies." "Caleb, that's too much. It's a loan. You pay me back when you can, however you can. $20 a month, 50, whatever works for you. No interest, no timeline, just whenever you're able." Nora did the math. Even $20 a month would take her over 2 years to pay back, but it would keep her from being evicted. It would let her breathe. "Okay," she said quietly. "Yes, I accept." "Yeah?" "Yeah." Caleb smiled, and the relief on his face made her realize how worried he'd been. "Okay, I can transfer it to you right now if you want." "You don't have to do it this second." He was already pulling out his phone. Better to just do it before either of us overthinks it. A minute later, her phone buzzed. $500 deposited. Nora stared at the notification, feeling something crack open in her chest. Not the slow fracture from before, but something different, like a shell breaking to let light in. "Thank you," she whispered. "Seriously, you have no idea what this means." "I think I have some idea." He reached across the table and took her hand. "And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I know that wasn't easy." They talked for another hour, finishing their coffee and then making more. Caleb told her about the project at work that was driving him crazy, a commercial building renovation that kept hitting unexpected problems. Nora told him about her interview on Wednesday, how nervous she was, but also how desperately she needed it to work out. "You're going to do great," Caleb said. "You're smart and competent, and you handle stress better than anyone I know. I handle stress by pretending it doesn't exist and then having a breakdown at 3 in the morning. Okay, fair. But you still handle it." It was after 10 when Nora finally left. Caleb walked her down to the lobby again, despite her protest. "Text me when you get home," he said. "I worry." "I will." She rode the bus back to her apartment feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The $500 wouldn't solve all her problems. She still needed a full-time job, still needed to figure out how to help Danny with his housing situation, still needed to get through each day without falling apart. But it was breathing room, space to think and plan instead of just react to the latest crisis. Tuesday she spent preparing for her interview. She researched the clinic, practiced answering common interview questions in front of her bathroom mirror, and tried on every combination of clothes she owned until she found something that looked professional but not try-hard. That evening, Marcus called. "Hey, so I think I found a solution for Danny's housing thing." "Yeah? You know my buddy Jake from the warehouse? He's got a 2-bedroom and his roommate just moved out. He said Danny could take the room if he can cover $400 a month plus utilities." "That's amazing. Can Danny afford that?" "If he picks up a few more shifts, yeah. It'll be tight, but doable. And it's in a better neighborhood than where he is now, closer to his school." "That's really good news, Marcus." "Yeah. For once, something actually worked out." He paused. "How are you doing?" "For real." "Better, actually. I've got an interview tomorrow for a full-time position, and I accepted help from someone, alone, to cover rent." Silence on the other end. "Who from?" "Caleb, the guy I've been seeing." "Nora." Marcus's voice was careful. "Is that a good idea?" "I don't know. Maybe not. But it was the only idea I had left, so I took it. Just be careful, okay? I don't want you getting hurt." "I know, I will." After they hung up, Nora wondered if Marcus was right to be worried. She barely knew Caleb, really. They'd been on a handful of dates, spent some time together with Sophie. That didn't mean they knew each other well enough for this kind of financial entanglement. But it was done now. She'd accepted the money, and she'd have to deal with whatever consequences came from it. Wednesday morning, she put on her interview outfit and caught the bus to the medical clinic. The building was newer, clean, with a waiting room full of plants and soothing paint colors. The office manager who interviewed her was a woman in her 40s named Patricia, who had kind eyes and a firm handshake. They talked for 45 minutes. Nora was honest about her work history, about dropping out of college to help her family, about the patchwork of jobs she'd held since then. Patricia asked smart questions and actually listened to the answers instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. "I have to be honest with you," Patricia said as they wrapped up. "You're not the most experienced candidate we're interviewing, but there's something about you that I like. You're honest, you're resilient, and you clearly know how to handle difficult situations. Thank you. I'll be making a decision by Friday. Either way, you'll hear from me." Nora left the interview feeling cautiously optimistic. Not confident, she couldn't afford confidence, but hopeful. Thursday and Friday crawled by. She worked her 2 shifts at the dental office, cleaned 3 houses, and checked her phone obsessively for an email from Patricia. By Friday evening, she'd convinced herself she hadn't gotten the job. Then her phone rang at 5:30. Unknown number. "Hello? Nora, this is Patricia from Riverside Medical Clinic. Do you have a minute?" Nora's heart hammered. "Yes. I wanted to let you know that we'd like to offer you the receptionist position. Full-time, 40 hours a week, starting at $16 an hour with benefits after 90 days. Are you interested?" $16 an hour, 40 hours a week. That was over $2,000 a month before taxes. "Yes," Nora said, her voice shaking. "Yes, I'm very interested. Wonderful. Can you start Monday? Absolutely. They worked out the details, start time, dress code, paperwork she'd need to bring. When Nora hung up, she sat on her couch in stunned silence for a full minute before it hit her. She had a job, a real job, full-time with benefits. She called Marcus first. I got it, the clinic job. I start Monday. Nora, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Then she texted Caleb. Got the job. Start Monday. Full-time with benefits. His response was immediate. That's incredible. We need to celebrate. Dinner tomorrow night? You, me, and Sophie? Yes. Definitely yes. Saturday evening, Caleb picked her up and drove them to a family restaurant that was neither too cheap nor too expensive. The kind of place with crayons on the table and a kid's menu shaped like a dinosaur. Sophie chattered nonstop about her week at school, about the Halloween costume she was planning, about how she'd lost another tooth and the tooth fairy had left her $2 whole. That's up from the $1 rate she used to get, Caleb said in a stage whisper. Inflation's rough even for fairies. Over burgers and fries, they celebrated Nora's new job. Sophie insisted on making a toast with her chocolate milk, nearly spilling it in the process. To Nora, she said seriously, for getting a real job like a grown-up. I'll drink to that, Caleb said, raising his water glass. After dinner, they went for a walk in the same park where they'd had their second date. The leaves were changing colors now, brilliant reds and oranges and yellows. Sophie ran ahead, collecting the prettiest ones to bring home. So things are looking up, Caleb said. Yeah, for the first time in a while. Nora watched Sophie chase a squirrel up a tree. I can start paying you back soon? Maybe $50 a month once I get my first paycheck? Whenever you're ready, there's no rush. I know, but I want to. It's important to me. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Sophie came running back with a handful of leaves, insisting they were the most beautiful ones in the entire park. We have to keep them forever, she declared. We can press them in a book, Caleb suggested. Make them last longer. Yes. Can we do it when we get home? Sure, Bug. When Caleb dropped Nora off at her apartment later, Sophie gave her a fierce hug goodbye. I'm glad you got your job, she said into Nora's shoulder. Now you won't be so worried all the time. How did you know I was worried? You get this line right here when you worry. Sophie touched the space between Nora's eyebrows. Like you're thinking really hard about sad things. You're very observant. I know, Daddy says it's my superpower. After Sophie ran back to the car, Caleb lingered. She's right, you do seem less worried. I feel less worried, like I can actually plan for the future instead of just surviving day to day. That's good. You deserve that. He kissed her forehead, gentle and unhurried. See you soon? Yeah, see you soon. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation for her new job. Nora bought a pair of professional-looking pants and 2 new shirts, stretching her limited budget as far as it would go. She mapped out her bus route to the clinic, timing it to make sure she'd never be late. She practiced her smile in the mirror until it looked natural instead of terrified. Monday morning, she arrived at Riverside Medical Clinic 15 minutes early. Patricia greeted her warmly and spent the first hour going over procedures, showing her the computer system, introducing her to the doctors and nurses and other staff. It was overwhelming, but manageable. Nora took careful notes and asked questions when she needed to. By lunchtime, she was answering phones and checking in patients like she'd been doing it for years. You're a natural, Patricia said during a quiet moment. I had a good feeling about you. The first week flew by. Nora fell into a rhythm, up at 6, bus by 7, at the clinic by 7:45, work until 4:30, home by 6. It was tiring but sustainable. And for the first time in months, she could pay all her bills and still have money left over. On Friday, she got her first paycheck. After taxes, it was just over $500. She immediately paid Caleb $50 toward what she owed him, bought groceries that included actual vegetables, and put the rest in savings. That evening, Caleb texted, Got your payment. You know you don't have to pay me back this fast, right? I know, but I want to. Okay. But if it ever gets tight, just tell me. We can adjust. Deal. October melted into November. Nora settled into her job at the clinic, learning the rhythms of the place, building rapport with the regular patients. Patricia became more than just her boss. She was a mentor, someone who checked in on how Nora was doing and actually cared about the answer. She saw Caleb and Sophie regularly. Dinners at their place, walks in the park, a trip to a pumpkin patch where Sophie picked the largest pumpkin she could find and insisted on carrying it herself until her arms gave out. Movie nights where they'd all pile on the couch and Sophie would fall asleep halfway through, drooling on whoever was closest. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Days when Nora's anxiety spiked and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to fall apart. Days when Caleb was tired and short-tempered from work stress. Days when Sophie threw tantrums and tested every boundary. But they worked through it. They talked instead of shutting down. They showed up for each other. In mid-November, Marcus called with good news. Danny's doing really well at Jake's place. He's keeping up with school, picking up extra shifts, actually saving money. I think he's going to be okay. That's really good to hear. Yeah. And I wanted to say thank you for all those years when you held everything together. I know we didn't always appreciate it at the time, but we do now. You kept us afloat when nobody else could have. Nora's eyes got hot. You guys would have figured it out. Maybe, but it would have been a lot harder without you. By December, Nora had paid back $150 to Caleb. She'd built up a small emergency fund. She'd gotten a raise at the clinic, small but meaningful. Things weren't easy, but they were stable. 2 weeks before Christmas, Caleb asked if she wanted to come over for dinner on a night that wasn't their usual Friday. He was acting strange, nervous in a way she'd never seen him. She showed up at his apartment at 7 as requested. Sophie answered the door in her pajamas. Hi, Nora. Daddy made your favorite. My favorite? The chicken thing with the lemon and the stuff. Inside, the apartment smelled amazing. Caleb had set the table with actual plates instead of their usual mismatched collection. There were candles, music playing softly. What's the occasion? Nora asked. Can I just make a nice dinner? But he was still nervous, fidgeting with his watch. They ate. The chicken was delicious, and Sophie talked about her plans for Christmas break. After dinner, Caleb cleared the plates and then came back with a folder. So I wanted to show you something. He opened the folder and pulled out a drawing. Sophie's work, unmistakably. Stick figures in crayon on construction paper. 3 people holding hands. A house with a red door. A sun with a smiley face. Sophie made this at school, Caleb said. Her assignment was to draw her family. Nora looked at the drawing more closely. The 3 stick figures were labeled in Sophie's careful printing. Daddy, Sophie, Nora. Her throat went tight. She's been calling you family for a while now, Caleb continued. And I realized she's right. That's what you are to us. Family. Caleb, I'm not asking you to move in or get married or anything like that. I know it's too soon for any of that, but I wanted you to know that you have a place here, with us, for as long as you want it. Nora looked at Sophie, who was watching her with those big, hopeful eyes. Do you want to be my family? Sophie asked. For real? Yeah, Nora said, her voice breaking. Yeah, I really do. Sophie launched herself at Nora, wrapping her arms around her waist. Caleb joined them, and they stood there in the middle of his kitchen in a 3-person hug that felt like home. Later, after Sophie had gone to bed, Nora and Caleb sat on the couch drinking tea. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Nora admitted, for you to realize this is too complicated or I'm too much work or whatever. Not going to happen. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen you at your worst and I'm still here. Because you've seen me at mine and you didn't run. Because we work, Nora. It's not always easy, but it works. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm still paying you back, you know. All of it. I know. You're stubborn like that. I prefer determined. Stubbornly determined. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Somewhere above them, Sophie's music box was playing. Anna had given it to her, Caleb had told Nora once. Sophie wound it up every night before bed. Can I tell you something? Nora said. Anything. For a long time, I thought asking for help meant I'd failed. That if I couldn't handle everything on my own, I wasn't good enough, strong enough. She paused. But that night when I told you I couldn't afford Marcello's, and you didn't make me feel like garbage for it, that changed something. It made me think that maybe needing help didn't make me weak. Maybe it just made me human. It does. And accepting your loan, letting you into my life, even when I was scared, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. harder than dropping out of school or working 3 jobs or any of it, because it meant trusting someone else with my problems instead of just handling them alone. How does it feel now? Better than I expected. Scary sometimes, but better. Caleb kissed the top of her head. I'm glad you took the risk. Me too. She stayed over that night, sleeping on the couch because it still felt too soon to share a bed with Sophie in the next room. In the morning, Sophie woke her up by bouncing on the cushions. Nora, wake up! Daddy's making pancakes and I'm helping. Which meant the kitchen would be a disaster, and the pancakes would be slightly burnt, but Nora got up and joined them anyway. Because this was family now. This was what it meant to show up and be present and let yourself be loved. The months that followed weren't perfect. There were still struggles. Money was tighter some weeks than others. Work stress spilled over into home life. Disagreements turned into arguments that had to be worked through, but they faced it together. Nora paid Caleb back $50 a month like clockwork. By the following September, she'd paid off the full $500. When she made the final transfer, Caleb tried to take her out to celebrate, and she refused. You already did enough, she said. Let me buy you dinner for once. So she did. She took him and Sophie to that same taco truck where they'd had their first real date. Maria was delighted to see them, declaring they looked like a proper family now. Took you too long enough, she said, winking. Sitting on that same wall under the same streetlight, eating tacos with the 2 people who'd become her family, Nora thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Terrified and alone, sitting across from Caleb at Marcello's, unable to afford the meal, and certain that admitting it would end everything before it began. She'd been so wrong. That moment of brutal honesty had been the start, not the end. It had opened a door she'd kept locked for so long, had let in light and air, and the possibility that she didn't have to carry everything alone. What are you thinking about? Caleb asked. Just how far we've come. Yeah, it's been quite a year. Sophie leaned against Nora's side, full of tacos and contentment. I'm glad you couldn't afford that fancy restaurant. Nora laughed. Why's that? Because then we wouldn't have come here. And this place is way better. Maria makes the best tacos in the whole world. She's not wrong, Caleb said. They stayed until the food truck started packing up for the night, then walked back to Caleb's car through streets that had become familiar and comforting. Sophie held both their hands, swinging between them. At Nora's apartment, which she'd kept because having her own space still felt important, Caleb walked her to the door like he always did. Thank you, Nora said, for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for not running when things got hard, for showing me what it means to let someone in. Thank you for taking the risk, for trusting me, for becoming part of our family even when you were scared. He kissed her, gentle and sure, and she kissed him back. When they pulled apart, Sophie was making exaggerated gagging sounds from the car. Grown-ups are so gross, she called out. You won't think so in about 10 years, Caleb called back. Yes, I will. Nora watched them drive away, then went upstairs to her apartment. It was small and the walls were still thin and sometimes the heat didn't work right. But it was hers, paid for with her own money from her own job. She'd built something here, something stable. And when she was ready, when they were all ready, there'd be room for something more. A bigger place, maybe. Shared space and shared lives and all the messy, beautiful complications that came with it. But that was for later. For now, it was enough to have come this far. To have learned that asking for help wasn't failure, that accepting love wasn't weakness, that letting people in didn't mean losing yourself. Her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Sophie says to tell you she loves you. Me too, for what it's worth. Nora smiled and typed back, Love you both. See you Friday. She set her phone down and looked around her small apartment. Tomorrow she'd go to work and be good at her job. She'd help her brothers when they needed it, but without sacrificing herself in the process. She'd save money and build a future and show up for the people who showed up for her. And on Friday, she'd have dinner with her family. Not the family she was born into, but the one she'd chosen, the one that had chosen her back. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. Because it was built on honesty and trust and the radical act of letting someone see you at your worst and staying anyway. Built on tacos under streetlights and stick figure drawings and the courage to say, I can't afford this, when every instinct screamed to pretend otherwise. Built on the understanding that love wasn't about having everything together. It was about showing up, especially when things fell apart. And Nora had finally learned how to do that. She'd finally learned how to let herself be loved.